Hello, I'm Lydia, and you're listening to Lens from the Fens. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode for Lens from the Fens. I hope that everyone is well and have been enjoying the recent hot weather. Obviously, with some restrictions being lifted, I hope that you're all still staying safe, keeping your distance, wearing your masks both on public transport and in shops. I've certainly been adapting to it. Obviously, it's different for everyone, but it's just a new normal that we all need to get used to, really. So I've got a few news stories to begin with. So at a local nature reserve, as part of the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, they recently announced that they have successfully had 2 cranes that have bred and hatched at least 1 chick, which is the first time in around 400 years that that's happened, which is incredible to know that these pretty big birds are only a few miles up the road from me is just amazing to hear. So I hope to go and visit them in the next few weeks if they're still there. Obviously the reserve is closed off, so you can't go fully onto the reserve. You can only look across it from the main road. So they obviously don't want people to intrude them. Obviously with lockdown being lifted, a lot more places are being opened up to the public, but in this circumstance, and because it's happened while people have been away, they want to keep the reserve empty as possible to get the cranes settled and just to keep an eye on them, basically, because obviously it's a big thing to happen near me. So yeah, again, great news. And again, just up the road from me, I have been up and down the River Welland, coming to and from work, and I have now managed to see 3 great crested grebe families on the water. So there's a family with 4 chicks, another family with 3 chicks, and then there's a family with just 1 chick. So that is actually what I photographed most recently. If you look on my Facebook and Instagram, it is the most recent image, which shows one of the great crested grebe parents with that 1 chick on its back. I think it was just getting to the stage where it can't quite fit on the back anymore, but it was just really nice to see them. Obviously, I haven't photographed them on their back before, so it was really nice to capture that. It's unknown whether there were more chicks that have either perished or eaten by other birds of prey or anything like that, but it made it quite a intimate moment for me, just it being the 1 parent and the 1 chick. So it was really nice to photograph that, but I'm really happy that there are other families as well with 3 chicks and more. So that's really good. So for this episode, I would like to talk to you about some of my inspirations into getting into wildlife photography. There's a lot of photographers out there, so I can't obviously put them all on here because that would be a very long episode. So what I've done is I've picked just a small handful of just some of the photographers that I have come across either at the start of my interest in wildlife photography up to more recently, and how their work has really made me think about what I could do with my own work, and just as them being a big inspiration for me. So I shall first begin with a photographer called Morten Hilmer, who is based in Denmark, and I came across him, it was only about a year or so ago. He was doing a project, like an expedition in Svalbard, and one of the projects associated with him going towards the Arctic Circle was to photograph Arctic wolves. And the way he documented it was just amazing. Like, all of his videography is really, it encapsulates you. It's quite dramatic sometimes, and then just to be part of the journey is really nice, where there's like quite calm music or there's no music and you're just listening to aesthetics of coffee being poured, because Morton really likes coffee, as I've seen in his videos. And then he will also do work closer to where he lives, so a lot of countryside wildlife, things to do with forest birds, deer that he gets nearby, and also he photographed some musk oxen, like in blizzards, and it's just amazing work. I really look up to what he does. And some of his more recent work includes badgers, which is part of a scientific study he's doing alongside. So if you want to check that out, he does have it up on his YouTube channel, and obviously his Facebook and his Instagram profile. So I'll go a bit closer to home for this one. Another photographer I recently came across is Joe Morano. He's Norfolk based, so he's quite nearby to me. He has the same sort of landscape, and in terms of the species that he gets, I also get as well. So anything to do with hares, deer as well. I came across his work from a Countryfile episode. If you're not from the UK, it's just a television series which talks about stories of those living in the countryside of the UK. So he was featured in that, and he spoke a bit about how to get recognised while doing wildlife photography. Again, he does vlogs when he's out with his camera, and his images of the mammals and the birds that he takes are just beautiful, and it does encourage me to get out with my own camera a lot more, mostly because I have pretty much the same species as he does. We're in the same area, which is just a flatlands. So yeah, it's nice to know that there's a photographer that I look up to that's not too far away from me, and we can sort of share the same insights on the sites we see. Yeah, it's really nice. So another photographer I've noticed in the last couple of years is wildlife conservation photographer Jamie Heimbuch. Forgive me if I spell that wrong or pronounce it wrong, but she's a wildlife photographer involved with conservation, and a naturalist and an instructor alongside. So she sparks a lot of wonder and respect towards animals that are facing uncertain futures, highlighting any dangers, as well as recording the efforts made by people to better understand local species near where she lives, which is in California. So with her being a conservation photographer, she actually became the founder of the Natural History of the Urban Coyote photojournalism project, which is one of the projects that I first came across when I found out about her. So alongside giving awareness for a variety of species, she also gives tips to other photography enthusiasts who want to get started into a career in conservation storytelling. So I was in one of her webinars. I attended one of her webinars, and yeah, it was really engaging about how she goes about starting a project and the process into leading into getting those final images, making sure that you are giving a story as you're photographing, just documenting it, and just to highlight what you want to portray in your work. What's one of the nice things is, because wildlife photography can be quite, or is frowned as being, a mostly male-dominated industry. So Jamie, alongside other female wildlife photographers, they are ones that I can look up to quite a bit, because it avoids any doubt as to whether young girls or women can be as successful as most men in wildlife photography. So it's quite inspiring to know that there are female wildlife photographers who can be just as successful, and the work is just as amazing. So there's another female photographer, again back into the UK, that I follow. It's Tesney Ward. So I saw her at a annual event called the Photography Show. Again in the UK, it was I think it's in Birmingham. She did a presentation about the work that she does, how she got into wildlife photography, where she's been, and the work I saw was just amazing. She photographed pelicans in Greece, and there's just one portrait where it's just straight head on with a pelican, and just all the details and the tones and the colours are just amazing to look at. She also photographed bears in Alaska, again, amazing detail. The story she managed to tell with her images was just amazing. I really liked that presentation. She also does a few specialist projects, which are of badgers and mountain hares. So alongside her photography profile on Instagram, she also has the Badger Diaries, which is badger_diaries if you want to look that up. So alongside the badgers and the mountain hares, she just encapsulates the environment so well, and it gives an amazing insight into the world that each of the animals or birds that she photographs lives in. So going back out across the Atlantic, this is a photographer that I follow. It's weird because the work that this photographer does, it's all marine based. So obviously I don't have as much access to the water as he does, because he lives in Monterey, California. His name is Slater Moore. Again, I've followed him for quite a few years now. One of the first images I saw was an aerial shot of a blue whale. This coincides with him being part of whale watching trips. So he'll take his own camera and also takes his drone to get aerial videos and images. And alongside that, another image that really captured my attention was breaching orcas. If you don't already know, I love orcas. It's a dream to go see them in the wild one day. The work he does is just a whole different world to me, and his work really inspires me to one day go out and photograph these whales and dolphins myself. I've actually got one of his prints of that blue whale that I first saw when I came across his work. He's just a big inspiration in terms of what other wildlife photography I want to do in the future. So next up is a British wildlife photographer called Will Burrard Lucas. I came across his work quite a few years ago, but I didn't look into his work fully. But he basically made a camera trapping device called the Beetle Cam. So this was released in 2010 as part of a series called The Adventures of Beetle Cam, where it went on little adventures in Africa, and it got some amazing up-close shots of the animals that live there. Again, it captures just a snippet of their lives in a whole different perspective, unlike photographing from a jeep quite far away with a long-distance lens. Alongside that, there's the Black Panther photograph as well. I can't remember if that was part of a project, so forgive me for that. But if you were to look up his name, it would be one of the main images that comes up for him. And then one of my favourite projects from him is The Land of Giants. So this is where he, again, travelled to Africa, and he recorded the last remaining big tuskers, which are elephants with tusks weighing in excess of 45 kilograms each. So they are massive. They've rarely been photographed before, and Will managed to just catch them beautifully. I think all of them are in black and white, so it brings out the details of the elephants so much more. Again, the surroundings they're in, because they are quite low-angled shots, it just gives the impression that they are massive animals, but the way they've been photographed, it just makes them even more impressive and powerful. And alongside the other tuskers he photographed, there was a cow tusker named FMU1, and he was actually the last to see and photograph her as she sadly died during the drought of 2017, which was the year he started that project. It gives even more meaning to this project, just giving an insight of how vulnerable they are now, in terms of the threat they face from human interactions, whether they be poaching or climate change. So it's very thought-provoking work, but all the other work he does, again, it's just an insight into wildlife that I haven't seen myself. So it just gives me more inspiration to want to travel, and just see what other wildlife's out there. And the last photographer in this segment is Audun Rikardsen. I don't think I said that right. Audun Rikardsen. Forgive me if I said that wrong. I think that's right. So he's a Norwegian biologist and wildlife photographer, and he is the professor at the Department of Arctic and Marine Biology at the University of Tromsø. So Tromsø is actually based in Norway, and it's a place I really want to go to for the marine life there. So obviously a lot of his work does capture the marine life alongside his work he does at the university. So this in turn, his work it includes a lot of awarded images throughout his career. One of my favourites being the underwater shots of the humpback whales, the orcas and walruses that he gets wherever he travels to for his work. Again, it's another world that I haven't seen myself or within my photography. It's a whole new perspective. The way it's sort of like half outer water, half within. It just gives that new perspective into the secretive lives that these animals live mostly below the surface. And with that, it also highlights the human impact that those animals face. One of the images that really grabbed my attention was an image of a bull orca right in front of a fishing vessel. So I've noticed in reports and news that over the years most orca pods within the Arctic Circle, like Norwegian areas or the Atlantic Ocean in general, they have actually adapted their hunting methods to actually teach the younger orcas to follow fishing boats, as the boats will often find the fish before the whales do. So it really brings up quite conflicting emotions, especially in that one image, considering what the impact of overfishing is having on marine life, or whether the animals are successfully adapting to their new ways of hunting, and whether it benefits them. So yeah, his work is quite thought-provoking, and I think with all of the photographers I've mentioned here and additional photographers that I haven't been able to mention, there's always a story. There's always something that gets you thinking, like the rareness of some of the animals that have been photographed. So yeah, it's just really thought-provoking, and that's probably one of the things I want to capture more in my work. And I think all of these photographers, they hit that. Like, it's inspiring to me, and it wants me to say, right, these animals, they're living this life, but it's being impacted. I think that's a lot to do with wildlife nowadays. A lot more land's being destroyed. There's the recent overfishing news happening near the Galapagos Islands, which is just horrible. So I think over time I would like to envision my work being just as thought-provoking as some of these photographers that I've mentioned, just to give the viewer an idea of what secret lives these animals live and what could be done to better protect them in the long run, especially for future generations. So that is the very short list of just some of the wildlife photographers that have inspired me over the last few years and continue to inspire me. Obviously there's a load more out there, there's just so many. I just can't put them all into one episode, unfortunately. But all of these photographers are found on mostly Instagram. I follow them through my personal profile as well as my photographic profile. So on my social media pages through Pinfall Photographic, I'll tag each of these photographers because most of them are on social media. So I'll tag their names. I'll provide links to their websites just so you can have a look at their work as well. Obviously, there's so many more photographers out there that inspired me as well as others. But yeah, as I said, this is a very, very short list of just some of the wildlife photographers that I look up to. So as I mentioned before, I would still like to do some more podcasts just to take you out with me when I'm out with my camera and just record what I see live to you. I've also got another story that I think I'll touch upon in another episode. It's a bit to do with photography, but it's more to do with the history of a particular animal in the fens that hasn't successfully been photographed, but there's been a lot of speculation as to where this animal's been sighted over the years, and it's quite intriguing to me. So I will probably do that as my next episode. I shall leave you to think of what that animal could be. But again, thank you all for listening. When I first started this, I wasn't sure how well it would go, not in terms of how many people will be tuned into this, but to see it grow as a project from being at home when we're all in lockdown, just starting off as to whether it could be successful. But I look at it now as it's something I just enjoy doing, like I do my photography. I just enjoy sharing my work. With my podcast, I enjoy sharing some of my stories, a bit about where I'm from, the wildlife that's here, and just wildlife stories in general. So I really enjoy it. I hope you are too. And I will speak to you all again in the near future. Bye. My podcast cover shows my own image created using Canva. The theme music is provided by Purple Planet Music. Check out their royalty-free music at purple-planet.com.